9 people wake up in the middle of the night on a freezing mountain and decide the safest option is to cut their way out of their own tent and run into the dark without shoes. And years earlier, a family living on a quiet farm is murdered, but whoever did it doesn't leave afterward. They stay in the house for days like nothing happened. Both of these things happened in the middle of nowhere, and no one can fully explain either one. The first story starts in February 1959 in the Ural Mountains in Russia. This is the kind of place where everything feels far away. Towns are spread out, the weather can turn on you fast, and if something goes wrong, help is not coming quickly. A group of 9 hikers are in the middle of a winter expedition across a mountain pass. Most of them are university students studying things like engineering and physics. They've done tough hikes before and know how to handle the cold. The group is led by a 23-year-old named Igor Dyatlov. He's calm, organized, and experienced, and the rest of the group trusts him. The mountain they're crossing is called Kholat Shakal. Locals sometimes call it Dead Mountain, mostly because the weather there can get extreme very quickly. Still, nothing about the conditions that day suggests anything unusual is about to happen. On February 1st, they set up camp on the slope of the mountain. It's cold and windy, but that's normal for where they are. They cook dinner, joke around, write in their journals, take a few photos, and settle into their tent for the night. That's the last normal moment they're known to have. When the group doesn't send a planned telegram by February 12th, people start to worry. At first, friends and family assume they're just delayed by bad weather. But as more days pass with no word at all, that worry turns into panic, and a search team is sent out. When rescuers finally reach the campsite, the first thing that stands out is how untouched it looks from a distance. The tent is still standing, the skis are still upright, nothing looks destroyed, but once they get closer, it stops making sense. The tent isn't torn apart by wind or animals. It's been slashed open in multiple places, and when investigators look at the cuts, they realize something important. The cuts were made from the inside. Inside the tent, everything is still there. Heavy coats folded up, boots lined up, food untouched, backpacks and supplies exactly where they were left. Basically, everything you'd grab if you were trying to survive the cold is still sitting inside. Outside, footprints lead away from the tent and down toward a nearby forest. What makes this especially disturbing is that many of these footprints are barefoot or just socks, even though the temperature that night is around -20 degrees Celsius. The trail leads into the trees. That's where the first 2 bodies are found, near the remains of a small fire. That tells searchers they were alive long enough to try to keep warm, but they're barely dressed. No coats, no shoes. Their hands show severe frostbite, and branches above them are broken, like someone climbed a tree. Some people think they were trying to look back toward the campsite, hoping to spot the tent. Over the next few weeks, more bodies are found. Some are discovered between the forest and the tent, positioned in a way that suggests they were trying to make it back uphill, but just couldn't. Others aren't found until later, deep in a ravine, buried under snow that only melts weeks later. And this is where the case really stops making sense. Several of the hikers have injuries that don't match what you'd expect from freezing or falling: broken ribs, crushed chests, cracked skulls. Doctors later say the force needed to cause these injuries is similar to a serious car crash. But here's the confusing part. There are no obvious injuries on the outside of their bodies, no deep cuts, no signs of a fight, nothing that clearly explains how that amount of force hit them. One woman is found missing her tongue and eyes. Another has a neck injury twisted in a way that doesn't line up with a simple fall. Some of the clothing even tests positive for radiation, which only adds more questions. They also recover a camera. One of the last photos shows a blurry shape in the distance. It's unclear, but unsettling enough that people still argue about it decades later. So the questions pile up. Why would 9 experienced hikers panic so badly that they'd cut their way out of their own tent and run into deadly cold without grabbing their gear? What caused injuries that severe without obvious damage? And why did some of them survive long enough to build a fire and try to go back? For decades, theories have gone everywhere. Military testing, a fight, an avalanche, something unknown. In 2020, investigators take another look using newer science. A theory involving something called a snow slab avalanche gains attention. It's not a massive wall of snow, but a heavy layer of packed snow collapsing and slamming into the tent. That kind of impact could cause panic and injuries, especially if everyone was asleep. Thinking another collapse was coming, the hikers might have cut their way out and run downhill to safer ground, planning to return. But in the dark, injured and disoriented, they never made it back. Freezing temperatures probably did the rest. It's not the most convincing explanation, but it's the closest thing anyone has. Still, one thing keeps bothering people. If the tent was their best chance of surviving the night, why didn't even one of them make it back? The second story feels scary in a completely different way. It's 1922 in rural Bavaria, Germany. The Hinterkaifeck farm sits alone, far from other houses, just fields, trees, and silence. Living there are Andreas Gruber, his wife, their adult daughter, her 2 young children, and a new maid who has only just started working there. Months before anything happens, strange things start piling up. The previous maid quits suddenly, saying the house feels wrong. She talks about hearing footsteps in the attic and whispers when no one else is around. Then Andreas finds footprints in the snow leading from the forest to the house. There are no footprints leading back. Keys start going missing. A newspaper shows up that no one in the family subscribes to. And then one night, the entire family is killed. Each person is attacked one by one in the barn using a farming tool. Evidence suggests they were lured out separately. The most disturbing detail involves the youngest child. Signs show the 7-year-old survived for hours after the attack, lying injured and alone. Days later, when neighbors finally check on the farm, something feels off. Smoke is still coming from the chimney. The animals have been fed. Food has been eaten. That's when it becomes clear the killer didn't leave right away. They stayed in the house, slept there, ate there, moved around like nothing happened. The murderer is never found. No one is ever charged, and the farm is eventually torn down. Do you think these tragedies happened the way they did because of what went wrong, or because the places where they happened were so isolated? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.